How we doing, everyone? This is James Sweeney, aka Splitsuit, or you might know me on RPM Poker as LOL Giggles. And today I'm going to be doing my first little just basic video on the RPM software. I haven't done a video on it before, so I figured today was as good a day as any. And just recorded a quick little 2-orbit stint. Ended up getting a couple of different spots, so I figured I'd just record it real quick and talk about it. And without further ado, let's just get this one started. So for this video, I'm not going to be using a HUD or anything, just going to be playing very, very straightforward. So it is a little bit different not having the HUD stats up and being able to rely on those. So I'm going to really have to just be paying attention to taking mental notes on how loose everyone's playing, how tight everyone's playing, and kind of going forward from there. So in there, I just do a quick little fold with my crap hand. Here with King 10, if it folds around, certainly going to try to steal. King 10 certainly strong enough to try to go for a very aggressive steal against Kepu, Kepu, however the hell you pronounce his name. Facing the min raise from the short stack, I'm just going to fold. I don't really want to get in the habit of calling there, because if I call, I'm out of position, have a really bad hand, and it's going to be really difficult to show money there against the short stack. He can pretty much c-bet me off a lot of boards. I don't really want to get into an aggressive check raise match against him. So it's a pretty bad situation to get involved. So I could 3-bet him, but against a short stack, I'm generally going to be a little bit tighter rather than getting really aggressive and putting check raise moves or 3-bet moves on him, because I really want information before I start messing around with that kind of stuff. So here we have an open limp from JJB. Pretty much don't suggest open limping. There's not a lot of good spots for it. I think you're going to see a little bit of open limping in this video, but it's also something that's pretty unique to RPM, is you see a lot of this open limping. Not that you don't see it on stars or tilts from time to time, but it's way more common on RPM. So there are definitely some ways to combat it, and I think I go through that a little bit later in the video. So here everyone's just checking around, pretty much giving up. Thook bets the turn, I believe. Yeah, for $2. If pretty much anything he's betting the turn with, he should have bet the flop with. You know, whether he has pocket fives, he should have just stabbed it on the flop. If he had a big hand, he should have stabbed it on the flop to ensure he got his stack in by the riv. If he has something like ace high or queen high, either stab the flop or pretty much get rid of it and just check it back to showdown. So I don't really love his play, pretty much no matter what he had. Because again, if you had, like, say you even had like a nut hand like nines for their top boat, it'd still be a better spot to bet, because everyone on the site makes a ton of calling mistakes, so no reason not to attack that. So here with Jack 5, I get one open limper, again, something that's kind of unique to this site. So I'm just going to go ahead and isolate him, because it's a situation where if he limps and then folds, I obviously make money. If he limps and calls, I'm probably going to be able to pick it up with a c-bet a lot of the time, whether or not I hit. And also, it's a hand that I'm going to be able to play pretty well with position. I am in position, first of all. My hand's suited, gives me a little bit of extra value. And I have a high card on it, so at least I can catch some top pairs that are occasionally good. So I have a whole bunch of good things working for me, so I'm going to be pretty aggressive there. With the Queen 8, sometimes I would steal. Usually after I was just aggressive, I tend to like to tone it down a little bit. I don't like to constantly ramp up the aggression so much that people start messing around with me, just because that's not really worth it for me. I'm just trying to make some easy money. I'm not really trying to get into a pissing match with anybody. So I'm just generally take the next one off unless my hand's really strong, or if it's like a really easy button or cutoff open. From middle position, going to be really tight here at the Jack 9. No real reason to be messing around there. A lot of people make the mistake of being way too aggressive from early position and middle position. Generally, you want to be really aggressive from late position whenever possible, and from early and middle, you want to be relatively tight. You don't want to be getting too crazy from there. Just taking a quick note on Kepku. I like to take notes on a whole bunch of stuff. Things like bet sizing tells if I can find them, things like timing tells, things like I think I'm going to take a note on Daniel in a minute, that he limp folded earlier. That's a pretty good note. Lets me know that I can probably attack him in the future, and there's a good bluffing opportunity there. So pretty much anything that happens, there's generally something to be gleaned from it. So when I'm playing less tables, I generally tend to take a ton of notes, and especially when I'm not playing with a HUD or my HUD stats, I generally am playing, or generally taking a lot of notes. So again, we have a really limped pot here. Yeah, limp fold, taking that note on Daniel from that ISO pot earlier. Good. Okay, so pretty boring pot. I think everyone checks this street for some odd reason. I hate when other people play slow. Good, so Armburst is going to check here. Given his hand, this is a good check. I actually don't hate if he goes for a double barrel on the river. You'll see exactly what I mean in a second. He decided to check it. I'm sorry, a double barrel on the turn. His hand is really strong. I think he'll probably never get raised. So he's probably okay throwing a double barrel out there. And I mean, I'm a very aggressive double barreler myself, so it's not the worst thing to check it there. But when you're playing against players that you think will float the flop liberally and then fold a lot to turn pressure, definitely a great spot to go for a double barrel. And Thook played the hand really, really well, other than limping under the gun with Jack 10 suited, which is really, really bad, especially from his stack size. You don't want to be the guy that's just limp calling, because aggressive players like myself are going to isolate you, and it's going to be really difficult for you to show profit. And you're not really doing anything. You're entering the pot, yeah, which is great. You're seeing a flop, but you're seeing a flop in a situation that's not really going to show you any money. The pot's really small. You're out of position most certainly, and it's just going to be way too difficult. So something I would generally suggest not doing a lot of is that open limping stuff. And you also notice these tables seem to be playing really, really passive. Not a lot of pre-flop raising. I believe the only two people that have raised so far are myself and Kepku. So, and I think Arthur Bach stole once. But pretty much everyone's playing really tight, a lot of limping, a little bit of calling raises and stuff. So passive games like this are generally very, very easy to attack, as long as you're looking for situations to throw in good bluffs and you're value betting really aggressively. So from here, I don't want to ISO the Jack 5, because if I did ISO and Daniel calls, I'm going to be out of position, which is going to make it really, really difficult to show profit post-flop. The big difference between this Jack 5 and the last Jack 5 is that the last one I was in position. This one being out, I don't want to attack it as much. So I'm just going to give up on this board. I don't hit it at all. Don't think I'm getting too many folds from any pair. I think on the turn I'm getting floated by like every draw, gut shots, etc. So just going to get out of there. With the Queen Jack, you notice I just quickly push the fold button when I see the raise in front of me. You don't really want to get, this is kind of the same concept as that King 10 from earlier. You don't want to get in the habit of playing these really tough reverse implied odd Broadway type hands out of position, especially from the small and big blind, because you're almost guaranteed to be out of position for the rest of the hand. Always guaranteed if you're in the small. And in a multi-way pot, how are you going to show profit there? Yeah, you catch two pair, maybe you get paid a little bit, but how often are you catching two pair? Not all that much. When you catch top pair, you're not really all that excited about it. So, and it's also a really, really difficult spot to play, sorry. So it's one of those situations I would generally suggest not getting yourself involved in. It's almost always better to play tighter pre-flop than it is to play really loose, because playing looser, especially if you don't have the post-flop skill set, is just going to get you hurt. And you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're taking any sort of financial or confidence pain, because it's just not useful in poker. Alright, so this hand we're actually dealt queens. Finally get a nice little big hand we can play. I say finally, we've played all of like 12 hands. So people that go on quote unquote, card dead or whatever it be, remember you're not supposed to get big hands all that often. And especially if you're only playing a couple of tables, you could easily go an hour or two without getting a single big hand. So don't get frustrated about that. That's just standard. So in this situation, we get Daniel, who open limps again. So I'm going to attack him for the same size we did last time, that 544. And same situation. I'm really hoping that he calls, and I'm hoping that I can print a lot of money post-flop from him. So Kepku's taking his sweet time. Come on, buddy, make a decision. Alright, so there he goes for the 3-bet. One thing we really want to note here is that he took a pretty long time to throw that 3-bet out. It wasn't as quick as most of his other plays were. So because of that, I'm thinking, okay, he's probably not quite that strong, and I'm going to be able to, especially with position in a strong hand, I'm going to be able to pick this up a lot. So I just throw out a half pot c-bet on the flop, thinking that he's probably giving up a decent amount of the time, but also he'll check call me with some worse hands, pocket tens, ace jack, king jack, things that he was bluffing like that. If he has something like ace king, like the really strong stuff, ace king, ace queen, he's probably going to check fold. And I don't really want to just check there and give him free cards to bink an ace on the turn or something. That could get really bad for me. So just taking a quick note that he did that. And as much as I want to ISO to ace 5 the next hand, remember what I said earlier, after I'm aggressive, I like to generally take it a little easy on the next hand. Same concept. I don't really want to ISO there with ace 5. I really don't expect Daniel to ever fold. Of course, I would have caught the perfect flop ever, but it happens to the best of us. Can't be results oriented like that. Okay, so Kepku is by far and away the most aggressive person on the table other than myself, and we've noticed that he's been pretty aggro with the open raising. We just saw him 3-bet me. I think it's the first 3-bet we've seen on these tables. So if I were going to be playing a very long session, I'd probably actually either look to play musical chairs and hopefully get on his left, or possibly even get off the table. If you're playing against someone who's really good and really aggressive and he's directly on your left or even like 2 to your left, it can sometimes be really difficult to make money on that table. So because of that, I'm a little more apt to consider getting off and either finding a new table or, like I said, seeing if I can switch seats on them and get a better situation. Okay, so Kepku raises, not shocking. He's pretty aggressive with the stealing. Stealing is definitely a great way to improve your win rate, as long as you feel that you're either picking tight guys to steal against and or that you can play post flop really well. It's a great situation to be nice and aggressive. So Kepku c-bets, Texas calls, Texas checks the turn and then fires the riv. Texas is probably relatively strong here, probably an ace-x type hand. Just value betting the riv. And one thing to note if I were paying really close attention is one that Kepku stole for 3x rather than 3.5. All of his other pre-flop raises were to 3.5. And the other thing is that he c-bet for like 5.25 or 5.50 into 7, as opposed to something a little smaller like $4 or something like that. So it's a relatively large c-bet size, and like I said, in the relative sense. So it might be something that I would look for in the future to see if maybe when he has a strong hand, if he bets a little smaller, or if that is his standard size. Again, always looking for little extra bits of information I can use. So sixes from early position, we'll just raise these. The average person, if you don't feel comfortable playing post flop, I wouldn't suggest opening this kind of hand from early position. I might wait till middle position. But if you feel comfortable, there's definitely nothing wrong with being aggressive with it. So I like you guys' calls. He's been playing really tight. So just go for the c-bet, thinking he'll probably fold pretty much all of his pairs. And again, notice I don't have to c-bet all that much, like 410 into 750. Not all that big. So notice at this point he's taking a pretty long time to call, which I'm thinking isn't all that strong. And I accidentally misclick on the size. I wanted to bet something a little bit bigger, like 930, but I just go for a double barrel here. I think his slow call on the flop is probably like a queen or him just messing around, so I'm just going to go for the dub, thinking it's going to be difficult for him to call with most anything, because there's not many combos of ace-queen, there aren't many combos of ace-king or ace-jack that he can have, and I don't think a guy like that's going to call me with ace-10 pre-flop. So I'm thinking I can pretty much move him off anything on the turn, which is why I go for that small c-bet, or small double barrel, sorry. So at this point, I think I just get off the table the next hand. I'll just wait till that happens just to make sure. Yeah, and I recorded the audio afterwards in case that wasn't obvious. Sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. So we'll just sit out. So hopefully you enjoyed. Again, we talked about a couple of really good spots. Talked about some isolation, talked about facing some aggression, talked about double barreling just a pinch, and also things like taking notes and things we could use for future line creation. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Come up with any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and good luck out there and happy grinding.